Good afternoon, folks. Mr. Marie here for Fix It Friday. So today we're going to do something that's probably a very common repair you may have already experienced in your house or something needs done. We're going to do a simple drywall repair. So a couple different kind of holes that we can maybe have in that drywall. So sometimes you open up the door, maybe there's no door stopper behind it. You slam the door open and the doorknob actually punches a hole in the drywall. Or after years of hanging pictures, you have holes in the drywall from anchors, screws, nails, and different things like that. So we're going to show you how to fix a couple of those different things today. So the first thing we need are a couple holes. So let's work on that. We're going to take our trusty Estling hammer here, and we're going to give this a quick one. So here we go. Okay, so that's a pretty nice size hole. Why don't you make that just a touch bigger for us? Okay, so we wouldn't say you put your fist through there because we know nobody punches walls. You folks are all smarter than that. So that's a small hole, and we'll also do another very small hole to kind of replicate maybe screws or something like that. So I'm just going to take an old screwdriver here. And we're going to make just a single puncture hole there. So if you take a look, let me zoom down here just a little bit. You can see what our two different size holes look like here. Whoop, not that big. So let's go just a little closer for you. See if this will cooperate, maybe not. There we go. Sorry about this. This technology is wonderful. Okay, so there's our two different holes. This one here is probably about a 1/2 inch wide, and this here looks like it's about 3 or 4 inches wide. So we're going to start the repair. We're going to need some tools for this, and I'll talk about those as we begin to use them. So the first thing we want to do for this hole here, we need to lay out where our patch is going to go and what kind of patch we're going to use, how big we're going to need it. Now, this drywall here is purple on the outside. That is used for wet surfaces, or wet areas. So you would commonly find this maybe in a basement, a bathroom, or something like that, and where there's moisture. So first thing we're going to do here, we're going to take a level. Okay, this is a 2-footer, and we want to take and make a square out of this. So we're going to lay this underneath, and we're going to go a little bit from behind here because we blew out the back of that wall pretty good. We're going to make sure our bubble's in the center of our level here. And we're going to draw a line. Okay, and it can be bigger than a repair. It doesn't have to be smaller. Next, we are going to do a vertical line. So let's do that. And we want this one to be plumb or perfectly straight up and down. So let's work on that. Okay. Now at this stage of the game, we could probably go and just assume a dimension. I like to come up with a little bit of a number. That makes it easier when we're going to lay out our next part. We're going to cut out our repair piece. So we're going to grab a tape measure here, and we're going to make this roughly 5 inches wide. Measure's not cooperating. Let's flip to the other side here. Okay, we'll go roughly 5 wide. And we'll do the same here at the top. We'll come over 5. Okay, so we have our couple marks there. We'll now take our level and we will make our line there. And on our top dimension, we'll come up with something nice here to make it easy for us. We'll go roughly, I don't know, we'll go 6 inches tall on this side. Now give us plenty of room to work around here. Okay, there's our 6. Okay, so now we're going to take and draw a line across the top of there. So at this stage of the game, we have a pretty nice square, and that's what we want to remove out of there. The next tool we're going to use, we're going to zoom out here. We're going to use this thing here. It's called a jab saw, J-A-B. Okay, it's very rough teeth on it. We're going to take and cut this section out. We're going to stay on the inside of that line, though. We don't want to go on the outside. The inside of our lines, that's where our dimensions are, and that's where they're decent. So take our jab saw, and we're going to cut this out next. What I like to do is cut into the corners first. Corner here, hopefully not blocking your view too bad. Okay, now we're going to make our straight cuts down, so we'll cut our sections out of here so we can get ready to patch. Okay. Whoop, tore it up a little bit. We hit that pretty good on the hammer. That's okay, though. We'll make it work. So any of this paper, sometimes after you have a hold of patch, remove some of that extra paper out of the way. That'll save you some time here. Okay, go up into this corner, and we'll now go across. Excuse my little model here, it is kind of rocking back and forth. I just have it screwed down to a sawhorse. Okay, and we'll now get our bottom section here. Some of that paper did tear a little bit on the front, but we'll show you a quick way to square that away in a minute here. Okay, so we have our opening cut. Next item we want to do, next tool we want to use is called a utility knife. We're going to take our utility knife and we're going to have our blade sticking out, and we're going to put a light chamfer on the outside edge. Okay, you can see that some of that paper tore a little bit as we were cutting it, and we like to try and get some of that crap out of there. Gives us a nice crisp line. Some people do it like this, some people don't. Personal preference on my behalf, I would say. More than one way to do the job. You'll see on some of those home improvement shows, they have little foil patches that you can take and use. I'm not the biggest fan of those. We're going to make this so that if you lean on it again, you're not going to have a problem. Some of those foil patches, they blow out real easy, and they can be problematic down the road. Okay, so we have that dressed up, we have that cleaned up. This hole over here we're not going to worry about. We're probably going to put a little bit of mud inside here or some drywall compound, because that's just a puncture hole. There's nothing too crazy about it. It's not structural by any means, so we'll probably skip that part. Okay, So we do have our dimensions. We want to next take and install a piece of material in here, a piece of wood, so that our drywall has something to screw to. So I'm going to take a piece of scrap 1x, so some scrap lumber laying around the house here. And what I'm going to do is take this piece of wood, piece of pine, I'm going to set it in behind here on an angle like such. And that's going to give me solid backing so that when I got to put my drywall patch on there, it has something to bite a hold to. So let's grab a couple screws here. These are just basic drywall screws, nothing special. And we have a battery powered impact gun, a cordless impact gun. We'll take and put a couple screws into this to hold it. Now ideally you want to keep the screws close to the outside corners of the patch. Ultimate goal is to make this so that you can't tell there was a patch there. Okay, I could probably get away with 2 screws. I'll put in a couple more just for good measure. And we want to countersink those screws. We don't want those screws, the head sticking out. We want to take those past flush. Okay, so we'll do one more up here. And that should take care of it. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is show you how to lay out a piece of drywall and cut that. So as we said, the next thing we're going to do is lay out our piece of drywall to fit inside of there. So here's a piece of scrap drywall I have laying around. And we're going to take and lay this thing out so it fits. Okay, we're going to make this just a hair smaller than the opening. So we got to lay this thing out. I'm going to subtract about 1/8 of an inch. And we'll use our level as our straight edge again. Okay, so right there we have our line. That's where we're going to make a cut. Now, quick trick when you're doing this. We have our line made. We're not going to take our utility knife and freehand that cut. I'm going to use the outside edge of my level as a straight edge. So I'm going to do this so you can try and see it. I'm going to put my hand up on top of the level. I'm a righty, so this is backwards for me. I'm going to take my hand, I'm going to hold opposite here. It looks kind of awkward, but it works for me because I'm a righty. I'm going to take my utility knife. I'm going to score against my level. Okay, moderate pressure. And the next thing I'm going to do is snap it. So I have that side scored. I'm simply going to take my piece of drywall. I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on the back side of this, light push, and it snaps. Okay. Now I'm going to take my utility knife and I need to cut through the paper on both sides. Okay. There we go. So that's one dimension we cut. We now need to take and cut our other dimension. So let's lay that out. And we are going to cut it the exact same way. As we said previously, we'll use our level as a straight edge. I'm going to skip the pencil line this time. We can go directly to the knife. Score it. Snap it, cut it. Okay, now we're going to fit this and see how it fits inside of our hole. So let's spin this guy around. Get back into our view here. And we're going to take and see if this pops in here. It should fit. Let's rotate that a little bit. Okay, and our patch fits in there pretty good. It is just, there's a little bit of wiggle room in there, but that's okay. We want just a little bit of play in there so we can finesse that with some mud and stuff like that. So we're going to grab a couple drywall screws here. And we're going to put some screws into our patch. Now, we went diagonal with our board to hold it, so make sure when you go to run the screws in, your screws are actually going into some kind of material to hold that patch into place. Now, some of you folks that live in older homes, my home is older. This house is built in 1948. previous owners were actually in World War II. The woman was a nurse in the Army, and the gentleman was, I think, an Army Ranger, so that's kind of cool. These are plaster walls. Plaster walls are thicker than this drywall. This drywall is only 1/2 inch thick, so in the case where you have a plaster wall where there's an issue, once you get it cut out, you might have to put some shims or some scrap plywood or something in behind there so that you can keep that patch closer to flush on the outside. So let's put a couple more screws in here. And you don't have to over tighten the screws. Don't have to go crazy with those. And really 4 is probably excessive, but I have them, so we'll use them. Okay, so that is our patch. We are moving right along here. Now, the next thing we want to do is tape this. There are 2 different types of tape to patch our hole. The first type of tape is a paper joint tape. This stuff is like $1 for a roll. I think you get about 75 feet in a roll. The other type of tape is a mesh style tape, and that's actually the stuff I'm going to grab here. Let me show you what that looks like. So I like to use the paper tape for corners and things like that. This mesh tape I like to use on patches. Okay, a little bit more strength to it, and it'll kind of help us out here a little bit. So we're going to take our tape and we're going to tape these on here. This stuff has adhesive on the back. The paper tape does not have adhesive. So if we're going to use the paper tape, what we want to do is take and actually put the mud on first, put our paper tape on, and another light coat of mud on top. Okay, we use the white stuff instead of the gray. This stuff's a little thinner, so we're going to take our tape, we're going to put that over top of our hole, and we'll take our utility knife, we will cut this, and that adhesive will hold that in place. Okay, so we'll do this all the way around, and try to center the tape up on the joint. Do it correctly, so you can see my screws, they are underneath that tape. So when I go to mud those up, my screw holes are covered. I can save a step when I go to complete this. Another piece on top. And that is now taped in. The next step we want to do is probably grab some mud. Now, a couple different types of mud or joint compound. First off, there's joint compound, which is a gypsum product, very similar to what our drywall is made from. There's another product which is plaster. We could mix actually plaster up and do it for this. Some of the joint compound products come in a powder form, and we have to mix that before we can apply it. Some stuff comes in a bucket. You can use that also, okay? There's also something called spackle. Spackle is not meant for patches like this. Spackle is meant for small holes, probably smaller than this. We'll do a little nail hole and we'll show you what that looks like too. Okay? I'm going to get the mud, we'll prepare that, and we'll be back in just a minute. So what we have next, I use powder joint compound. I don't use the stuff in a bucket because I don't go through much of it. So I keep the powder, I keep it in a bucket, and keep it sealed up. So it's a very fine light powder, as you can see inside the mud pan here. And this is called a taping knife. This is a 5-inch taping knife. We're going to add some water to this, we're going to mix this up, and then we're going to apply it to that patch right there. So I'm going to let me move down here a little bit so you can see the pan, okay? And I'm going to add just a little bit of water in here. We want to keep the consistency of this at this stage of the game, I would say the consistency of peanut butter. We don't have to, we're not looking to make too much of a mess here. The more joint compound that we apply, the more we have to sand. So as with everything, we're going to go light water on this. We're not going to go heavy on the water. We're not going to go heavy on the compound either. Now, the stuff I use is also called 45-minute, which means this material sets up in 45 minutes. Okay, it is kind of rough. There's still chunky in here. We're going to continue to mix this. I could probably take a smaller knife to mix it, but we'll work with this here for a minute because that's what I dug out. A lot of the old timers like mixing their own up. A couple people that I know that do a little bit of drywall repair, they prefer to mix their own up rather than use the stuff in a bucket. Okay. Everybody has their own preference. So continue to mix this. And we have a nice light consistency. It's not real heavy. It's not too crazy here. Okay, mix for another minute. So 45-minute compound. This stuff will dry in roughly 45 minutes. As long as it's not too terribly waterlogged. So we're going to take just a minute here. Continue to mix. Put all the lumps out. We don't have to sand those later. So, consistency looks pretty good. We're going to get some on our knife here. And we will put our first coat on. So, we're going to grab some on our knife. Okay, and we're going to take and put a nice light coat across our tape. Now, on the first pass, whoop, got a little goofy spot there. We'll remud it. Okay, we don't want to do too much sanding on this. We're going to go crazy. We don't want to get crazy with it. So I'm going to put it on with this knife here. And then I have a larger knife in the background, which we'll grab in just a minute. It's a little bit wider. We're going to take and hit that wider knife. Okay? So, try and smooth it out a little bit more. So this here's a 12-inch knife. The name of the game here is to blend this in so you can't tell where it is. All right? So we'll take and this will probably take a few coats. That's okay, we have some time. Okay? So we have our patch started here, and we will take and let this dry. So that's going to take a little bit of time. So in that case, we do have some extra mud in the pan. We'll patch this other hole up right here. And then I also did another small hole. It looks like a screw hole. We'll take a little bit of compound there, and we'll just put it over top. Feather that in, and we'll do our other hole. Okay, this is going to take some because we punched a pretty decent hole in there. You can see it looks like it's popping out a little bit. We'll give it a little push. And we'll let this stuff cure. Okay, now I do have some extra mud or joint compound inside of my mud pan here. This stuff here, because it's mixed up and it's only 45 minutes, I don't think it's going to last until the next video. So we'll probably make up another little batch after we sand that. Okay, so once that dries, we'll be back. We'll sand it. We'll put another coat on, and we'll go from there. Now that our joint compound is set up, we're going to sand this. So I have a sanding screen attached to a sanding block. Now this is specific for doing drywall and plaster kind of work. This also has an attachment where I can hook up my shop vac. So if I was doing this in the upstairs of my house, I can hook the shop vac up, and as I sand, it's going to pull that dust. So I don't have dust all through the house. Okay? So we're going to do light pressure. Got a little bit of, I like to do a little bit of swirling motion. And we're going to sand down our joint compound. So the idea here is to obviously smooth this out. We can still see where a couple of the screws are. We can still see some of the tape that we used. We want to smooth this down. Oh, it came off there. We'll reattach our screen. We want to basically sand this until it's relatively smooth, and we don't want a big bubble sticking out where the joint compound is. So that's the other thing we want to take care of. We want to do what's called feathering that in. So we will continue to sand here for another minute until we're nice and smooth. Okay, I think we have it there. That's relatively smooth. The next, I also sanded that puncture that I did in there, and there's also a nail hole that I filled in with some of the joint compound also. So the next step, I'm going to mix up another little batch of joint compound. We're going to apply it to that, let it dry, and that might be the last time we have to do it. We'll let it cure, let it dry, and go from there. So we took some more of our joint compound powder. We're going to add a little bit more water to that, or add some water to that. And we can make this a little bit thinner. We don't have to keep it as thick as we did the first time around. So as we go to mix this, we'll go just a little thinner. Now we don't want it soupy and watery. At the same time, we don't want it real thick. So last time we did about the consistency of peanut butter. We've got just a little bit more runnier than that for this next time. We have it there. I don't know if you can really see the consistency of this or not, but it falls. Okay. So we'll take our 5-inch knife. We're going to put some mud on here, and we use our 5-inch to apply. Then we're going to take our 12-inch to feather this in. So have some on our surface. Let's grab our 12. Okay, got the big boy. Oh, look at that. That's beautiful. Got just a little more mud on there. There's a couple spots that are still just stick. Whoop, got a hard spot. Still sticking out there. Nice. Okay, so at this stage, we're going to let that sit. The more we mess with it, we'll probably cause more problems. So this will take about 45 minutes to dry because we're using that 45-minute joint compound. Once it dries up, we will come back down, probably touch it up one more time with a sanding screen, and then we'll be finished. Okay, working to the end of the project here. The last thing we want to do is feather in just a couple of these edges. So rather than use a sanding screen for drywall, I have a sanding block. That's what this thing is. And I put some 220 grit sandpaper on it. So I'm just going to lightly sand over our patch. Just to make sure our edges blend in. Okay, we would now clean this off well. And the very, very last step is to prime this and paint it. Now, this product here has a primer and a paint combined. So 1 or 2 coats of this, maybe 3 coats, that would suffice. Or you could go the old school way. You could buy a quart of primer, prime the surface, let that dry, and then move to a top coat, which would be an interior paint. Okay? So that is how to patch drywall. Hope you find this informative, and I hope you use it around the house.